Julian, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, we're just testing the delay on the satellite there. So just to explain to everyone, you are in the Ecuadorian Embassy in London. You've been there for just over a year and a half. Can I ask you, what is it like for you in there? How has the last 20 or so months been? Can you describe it or give us a sense of what it's like to be stuck in there?
Well, I've been doing interesting work for a long time now. Interesting, perhaps in this Chinese sense of the word. The last 4 years, I'm detained without charge in the United Kingdom. Almost 2 years now. The Ecuadorian Embassy. People in this conflict that we are in, some of them are in a considerably more imperiled position than I am. Of course, it's not easy to be in the one place for so long. The UK government has admitted to spending $8 million in the surveillance of me in this embassy through its police forces alone, not including MI5 and GCHQ. So it's quite a challenging environment to run a multinational publishing organisation that specialises in protecting sources and high security publication.
Okay, I would say to this police officers for the next half hour they can stand down because we've got you covered at least. So in this room, and I think you can see the crowd that we've got here, Julian, in this room we've established a massive proportion of the hosting community. It's their stuff that's carrying and holding all this data which the customers had believed was sensitive and private. What advice can you give them on the type of products that they may be able to offer in the future?
Well, look, I've been writing about the National Security Agency spying worldwide for about 20 years now. But suddenly the understanding of that has gone global with the response to the Edward Snowden revelations. Interestingly, not just what's contained within those documents, but the reaction to them. I think it really is the over-the-top reaction by the White House and the US State Department, National Security Agency, that reveals the importance of National Security Agency spying operations to the power structures of the United States and the Western world more broadly. It's like when you see a very big wave on the surface of the ocean for no apparent reason. Well, there is a reason underneath. There's been some shift of land or an earthquake or something. And this is a reflection of that. And people kind of get that, even though perhaps they haven't questioned the philosophical basis for it. But what they see is information that is causing a big fuss. And that draws attention to that information and says, well, this is important in terms of power and the administration of power, in that so many very powerful organizations are making such a fuss over it. Now that has led to states and organizations within states, and to a much lesser degree individuals being concerned about why is it that those powerful organizations in the West predominantly feel that they have a need to engage in such multi-nation state surveillance, and what's in it for them, and isn't that perhaps a threat to the independence and success of other states and other organizations? And the answer, of course, is yes, it often is.
So
and that has led to the creation of market forces.
Sorry, Julian. Yeah, we're working with a 10-second satellite delay, so we'll do our best. I just wondered whether whether you could give any advice to the telcos and hosters here. In the future, if we have an open but secure internet, where the people in this room know that they can offer services to their customers which won't be intercepted. Can you see a way that that can work? I mean, what kind of products can these guys possibly offer? Like Ditlev maybe was suggesting just a secure email button for the emails that you care about, which they'll encrypt at a cost. Do you think that's workable?
Well, look, there's a massive period of innovation going on across the world now. I personally know of dozens of startups where people were working on this sort of technology for years, but now suddenly there's a market for it. You don't have to explain why people, at least or why organizations, need it. So various types of things in terms of communications, encryption, storage encryption, multi-party interactions, currency encryption, transaction encryption, all that stuff is happening now. And the other part is the jurisdictional churn that is occurring, where hosters are a new type of jurisdictional refugee who are having to move their operations, or there's an advantage to moving the operations into jurisdictions which can be perceived to be more protective. Now, if you look at something that I was working on back in 2009, early 2010, the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative, that was a package of legislative reforms to promote Iceland as a good place for hosting material, precisely because it would protect hosters and publishers from unwarranted subpoenas and lawsuits. And I think within the EU, especially, we're going to see new standards and legislation requiring a minimum degrees of communication security. And that is also going to lead to jurisdictional churn, and people, hosters that are first movers in that business will develop a reputation for being trusted providers. And that trust isn't just about in the security domain. Trust is something that crosses several domains in mass hosting, because if you trust the competence with something as sensitive as security, then you're going to be inclined to trust the competence in relation to other aspects as well, such as uptime and billing and redundancy. So
you mentioned Iceland. I'm sure everyone in the audience that's from Iceland, we have a representative, are very happy about that. I wonder whether you, and this might not be a realistic question, but can you name some of the other countries that you regard as secure, as in protected from, you know, America coming knocking on the door, and also that are secure from just being too corrupt to store your stuff there?
Yeah, it's a difficult game, and it depends on what you're storing. Of course, WikiLeaks as an organisation, we are very interested in this and have been for many years, because we distribute our material in terms of internal management, in terms of upcoming publications, and our Serbian infrastructure in different places across the world. And the sort of answers to how we do it, well, we have to look at the geopolitical alliances of the countries concerned, the cultural values about what is permitted or tolerable or encouraged in the country concerned, the degree of transparency of when there is an attempt to gain access to a host or communications network. Will we find out about it? Our degree of penetration of the intelligence and police services in that country. So we get advance warning of something going on. The legislative environment, which formalizes informal standards about what should be done and what should not be done. The degree that the country is wanting to have a reputation for acting in a certain manner. What is the incentive or reputational incentive or disincentive for acting in that manner? The agreements between the United States or another country to spy or not spy on that country. For example, within the Five Eyes alliance, intelligence alliance of Australia, UK, New Zealand, and Canada, and the United States, the there's an agreement which is reasonably well adhered to, that these countries don't spy on each other. However, they bulk intercept their incoming and outgoing communications and then pool access to it. So the end effect can be largely the same, but you're less likely to see targeted hacking operations into hosters. Instead, you're more likely to see simply cooperation where the NSA calls up GCHQ, calls up MI5, and they use coercive or secret instruments to go into a hosting provider. So it's actually quite a complex business. There also, of course, is the security aspects and culture and ownership structures of the companies that you're dealing with. Are in fact they are controlled by other people who are interested in spying on you or spying on your customers. How easy is it for your staff to be co-opted? The Snowden disclosures reveal that the National Security Agency spends about $350 million a year on compromising security systems. That's not hacking hosters, that's compromising the underlying technology of security systems. So let's say that there are 10 major providers of security systems in the world. That's 35 million per year per provider. That's $1 million bribes to the CTOs, the research scientists, the system administrators, and so on. Can the companies you're dealing with withstand $1 million bribes per year deployed on their staff?
So
the answer is probably not. So it's a really quite complex environment.
Okay, we were talking just a minute before you came on the line, although I think you could hear exactly that point being made on stage here, that it's often the people who run these systems that are being, okay, so you're saying targeted. Ditlev was more polite, said that they're making inquiries. What advice can you give? And I wonder whether people in this room actually know that this goes on, maybe not at the top level, but the next level down. These people are being approached or indeed targeted. What advice can you give to the people in this room on how to deal with these inquiries that don't come with a piece of paper that absolutely says we're allowed in, we're allowed to see this?
Well, I like the way that Bahnhof did it, who is marketing itself as a security ISP in Sweden, which was, they recorded Säpo, the Swedish secret police, coming in for a meeting to ask for information off warrant, and then publish the recording. Of course, for most big hosters, there's judicially authorized requests from the police, and there are many good reasons for the police to be investigating multinational crime that is based on hosters. And then there is attempts to overstep that boundary by simply asking, can it be done? And I think this asking, can it be done, is a difficult business. There has to be some really well-defined rule within a hoster that is revealed to its clients about under what circumstances will information be given without a warrant. I'm not going to say that it should be never. I think perhaps in some cases it is reasonable that information is given without a warrant, but it needs to be very clear under what circumstances it is, to prevent a gradual co-option of the staff of the hoster in terms of their relationship with these agencies. And then I think a much bigger point, which is that system administrators and CTOs and the programmers working in hosting environments are targets themselves. And that has been revealed again and again in the Snowden material. Just like Russian organized crime will go after a system administrator in order to get access to the material they control, the National Security Agency, GCHQ, etc. They do it as well, and much more aggressively. They go hunting the people involved in running hosting companies. So everyone needs to understand that they are meta targets in this target environment, people who are involved in running telcos or running hosters.
So there seems to be a rush to establish or be associated with German-style data protection laws. We've seen recently in Strasbourg and Brussels in the last month. It looks like the Safe Harbour Act is being challenged more and more. This is the kind of, I believe, and excuse me if I get this wrong, the kind of fuzzing of the actual EU laws when we're dealing with US companies. I think the guys here are roughly nodding with that. How realistic is it in?
Well, I think to a degree this is a matter of national sovereignty. Now, of course, the news is all flush with talk about how Russia has annexed the Crimea. But the reality is the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, principally the United States, has annexed the whole world as a result of annexing the computer systems and communications technology that is used to run the modern world. So it's a matter of national sovereignty, and if there is not at least some national network that can be maintained in a moment of economic or political conflict with the United States, then there's simply too much leverage on nation states to be able to effectively defend the interests of their peoples. Now, in terms of a much broader network which doesn't include simply the most critical information systems within a state, I think that is something that is hard to achieve. On the other hand, I don't think it is necessary to achieve in that way. If we look at, say, Latin America, 98% of Latin American telecommunications going out to the rest of the world pass through the United States. That's an enormous chokehold on Latin America, and of course all those communications are intercepted, nearly all those communications are intercepted by the National Security Agency as they pass through to Europe, and by the same token from Europe to Latin America. What is the solution? Is the solution building new fibre optic cable lines from Latin America to Europe which bypass the United States? Well, that's an extremely expensive business, and it's probably 5 years. It should be done, at least so that the internet can't be turned off for Latin America. So there can't be an effective information embargo between Latin America and Europe. On the other hand, the correct type of encryption, bulk encryption between Latin American fibre optic points and those in Europe that pass through the United States is enough. That's one of the amazing things about encryption, that somehow the universe has permitted a type of mathematics and a type of physics which permits the resistance against unlimited coercive force. It doesn't matter how many soldiers, how many guns, how many nuclear weapons you have. If your encryption system is right, well, it can pass through the United States. You can effectively create a channel through a hostile country where you can send critical economic and political information, connecting two great societies together, in this case Latin America and Europe.
But as you said then, if the encryption, this happens, you know, I mean, one of the main methods of hacking at the moment is not to go at the technology, but to go after the social engineering aspect. And I suppose that's going to be the weakest point. As soon as you encrypt data that comes out of Brazil, so America can't tap it, they'll just go to Brazil and with a shed load of, what is it, pesos, and you know, get the keys. I mean, will that always be the weakest link, the people?
Yeah.
Good answer.
It's a bit hard to say. I mean, there you have an example of secure, potentially secure technology connecting two continents, and so the value of those endpoints is tremendous. And as I said before, the US has budgeted $350 million per year to penetrate encryption providers and other security companies. Can those endpoints withstand that kind of corruption of the humans running it, or the electronic attacks that can be leveraged off the people maintaining those endpoints? I mean, it really is quite a good question.
Okay.
And I think the answer has to be some kind of, but there has to be variation. There has to be a spectrum of encryption products and communications, so that you can't simply compromise one encryption provider and then own all the equipment and links that it is running.
Now, one of the big topics here is open source, and I'm wondering whether the fact that you have an open system, so everyone knows how it works, would make encryption more secure than a closed system.
Well, we know from experience that it does seem to be the case, that there's a vast number of closed source snake oil encryption systems being spread around. Now we know that open source is not entirely a solution. For example, there was a encryption bug in the Debian's version of SSH in the random number generator, which existed for years. And that was all open source. Now, it was eventually found and revealed, and it was found and revealed also because it is open source. But the way things are done now is through bug doors. So these are backdoors designed to look like bugs. And you know, what is the security of the programmers who are involved in some of these open source systems? Can you, when they do update their code, can you implant what looks like a bug, even a typo, that carries through? Or say, look at a system like Debian, the various kinds of Unix systems. Look at all the packages they include. Look at the upstream libraries, dependencies upon dependencies upon dependencies. All you need to do is compromise one of these dependencies, and then there's a flow through. And these will get embedded. I mean, these modern systems now are assemblages of incredible intellectual content, which is being developed all over the world over the past 10 years by many different players. But it's the nature now of CPUs that there's only a few, maybe 3 different security layers in these systems. But when you pull together thousands of packages all together, it's pretty hard to actually resist these security compromises that are engineered by nation states. It doesn't mean that it's not worth trying and increasing the cost of owning the world.
Now, you facilitated the leaks of obviously a lot of sensitive information. A lot of it was leaked by Edward Snowden last year. Who should decide what is made public and what is kept secret? Because I'm sure you'll agree that we can't just reveal every secret. That would be damaging.
Well, I have to caution you in relation to that last point, because I'm not aware of any case, certainly none from our publications, over 7 years of over 8 million documents, of a single person being physically harmed as a result of publication. So you hear this canard trotted out over the last 50 years by embarrassed military authorities whose various abuses have been exposed, up to and of course including murder, coming out and talking about speculative harm in order to distract from the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people that has been caused as a direct result of their actions. So let's first put that on the table. But your question about who is to decide, who is to judge, well, we all are. I mean, we all do as a result of our behaviour. That is the nature of living in an international society. This is not kindergarten. There's not a kindergarten teacher making the rules here. We are living in an international society of states and organisations, and through our behaviour, what we support, what we don't support, what we do, we decide which information enters in to our common human historical record from which we all draw our decision making. Even the language itself is part of this common intellectual record that humanity has, and that's something that is so important. It is, in fact, the most important thing that human beings do. That it is not a matter simply for laws in one state or another. The sharing of information, the communication of free peoples across history and across geography is something that creates, maintains, and disciplines laws.
Okay, Julian, we've been asking for Twitter questions with the hashtag Privacy Matters. I think I'm okay to take a few of these now, which will pop up. So, firstly from, and this is where if you've chosen an embarrassing Twitter name, you're going to regret it. This is from the Where, is the Twitter name, referring back to the difference between encrypting content and encrypting the connection. The panel here said do both, obviously. If you encrypt the connection and you encrypt the content, it makes it, I guess, doubly difficult to snoop it on the way, because decryption is expensive and it adds a barrier. Does decryption really add a barrier when you're talking about a government with more computing power than the rest of us, I'm guessing, put together, if they need it?
Well, look, the most modern encryption systems, as far as we can determine, are good. It's the compromise of the endpoints or the compromise of the software packages that produce the encryption. As an example, the compromise of the random number generator in RSA's BSafe suite, which was one of the leading commercial providers of encryption libraries in the United States. The encryption of content, that's going to happen. Let's look at this properly. In terms of where hosts want to locate data physically, well, you want to put it in a place where there's low regulatory costs, where where the air outside is cool, so air conditioning is cheap, close to large populations and fast communications infrastructure. So that's your decision-making criteria for that. But those locations, on the other hand, may be quite bad in terms of their ability to withstand judicial interference or unlawful intelligence agency interference or corruption of the staff that is running them. But if you encrypt all the storage, then you don't have that problem. You can pick the storage location, which is optimal in terms of providing storage, and not have to worry about its security properties. So everyone's going to be doing that, that's clear.
We have another question here. This is from Sasha Endlicher, who asks, Sasha talks about the top 5 measures, but we'll just go for what are the top measures that we should pressure lawmakers to look into post-PRISM? So what should we be pressuring the lawmakers to look into?
Yeah. Well, let's understand what's kind of going on here. Well, these revelations about the United States and GCHQ annexing our new world of the internet has produced market forces to do something about it. But they're also playing within Europe, a very interesting geopolitical phenomenon, which is Germany's new leadership of Europe, and it demonstrating its new leadership of Europe. And one of the ways to demonstrate leadership is to demonstrate that someone else doesn't control you. And so here we have an example of Angela Merkel and German society as a whole striving slowly to demonstrate some kind of independence in relation to the United States. And we should absolutely grasp that moment to try and get more independence for Europe from what is the dominant military and intelligence system in the world, the US NATO alliance, which accounts for more than 75% of global intelligence and military expenditure. And we can do that by mandating not laws so much about data retention, although those are perfectly important, but laws about encryption standards, and that telecommunications links must be encrypted to a certain standard. Those links must be tested, the encryption must be tested, and so on. Just like we have, for example, with physical safes in the EU, we have standards. Those standards need to be made strong, need to be made proportionate to the value of those telecommunications links or the amount of data being stored, and the EU needs to push for that in relation to trade negotiations with other countries. If you want to have a large-scale communications connection to Europe, well, it has to be under a certain basis.
We have a question here from, I'm going to take a guess, it's JP Donio, and it actually picks up on what you started to talk about there with Germany. Which countries do you think provide the best legislation to provide privacy hosting?
Well, it's not, you know, we have to understand what legislation is. Legislation means that at some moment of time there was a desire to put into writing a political consensus about what should be done and what should not be done. But legislation is not at all the most important thing. That's just writing. What is important is the political, cultural consensus of powerful organisations and groups within a state to do things in a certain way and to want to demonstrate that in the form of legislation. Now, at this moment, it is clear that within Europe, Germany is the country that is most politically concerned about the issue and is trying to demonstrate its independence from the United States and the UK in striving forward for leadership in Europe. So while that process is underway, I would say that Germany is the best state. In terms of legislation, Germany, Austria, Iceland, you know, many of these are kind of equivalent. In terms of cultural values, presently, and the various power organisations in the state, Germany is the leader. Iceland culturally is also quite good, and it's reasonably removed from these deals with the United States or British intelligence, even though there's a conservative government there now. But you know, it's been our experience that foreign intelligence operatives have a bit of a problem working in Iceland because it has its own unique language. You can see everyone flying in and out because it's an island and so on. So it's important to keep an eye on the shifting of geopolitics and national political and cultural wills, and not just the legislation.
Okay, I believe we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. This is Sebastian Lepert, who says, and I understand this one, Julian, I am a geek, but I'm not as deeply in it as the rest of this room. My background once told me that email was invented almost for fun, no thought for security. The question from Sebastian is, should we reinvent transport protocols within the internet? Was the actual design naive from the point of view of privacy and security issues?
It was naive, yes, that's true. In relation to email, it's clear to me that email is going to be dead. And there's many different innovative point-to-point store-forward communication system, which email is. You send something, it's sort of stored in the network until it gets to its endpoint. An example of one of those is POND, P-O-N-D. It's sort of very high security store-forward email replacement. It's not really usable for the common population, but just very high security elements. But a number of those things are starting to occur now. Bitmessage, and a great many other systems are coming and will inevitably replace email. I think it's, in terms of the security at the transport layer, that's quite a bit harder because of all the legacy systems. I think we're going to be seeing security at the applications layer, and maybe in some kind of meta transport layers, which sort of automatic VPN style systems are.
Okay, this question is from Olap. Information is, I felt a cold frost from Ditlev there when we were talking about email. Information is fundamental to humanity, so who decides what is secret? Should Ditlev? Should Raphael? Should you, Julian? It goes back to the question I asked before. Once it's out there and we all decide that it should be secret, it's too late. Who decides what is kept secret?
Well, if it's just a choice between these three, then of course I should. Right? That's the answer. But I mean, I kind of answered this question. I kind of answered this question before, which is we all do, as a result of our behaviour, to release information, to share it, to lobby and campaign against particular laws, to give money to organisations like WikiLeaks or Bits of Freedom, or the EFF, or ACLU, or Free Press Foundation. That, you know, we all do that. We can't. It's an absurd fantasy and a very dangerous one to imagine a world where MI5 or the NSA or the CIA can decree that all the people in the rest of the world are not allowed to share some piece of information. Not only is that wrong and totalitarian in relation to states and civilizations, but it simply won't happen. I mean, we've demonstrated that, you know, despite all the problems that we have encountered, despite the battle we have, compare us to other publishers. We haven't filed a single person, unlike nearly every other publisher in this sort of business. None of our people, in terms of our staff, are in prison. We have not censored anything that we have published. We have been completely victorious in the fight against the State Department and Pentagon to take down that information. And we managed to defeat the National Security Agency in the largest manhunt the world has ever seen, in removing Edward Snowden under their noses and putting him into a place of safety. So these are, yes, titanic organisations with tens of billions of dollars of a year budget who are corrupting through coercive laws and through bribery and hacking organisations all around the world. But ultimately, they are bureaucracies that do not attract the best people and are not very fast, and as a result, they can be outmaneuvered.
Okay, that is all the time we have. So, Julian, thank you very much for your time. I'd like to ask everyone in the room to show their appreciation for Julian's time. Ladies and gentlemen, Julian Assange.